we greet our friends everywhere with Chapter 14 of To Ask No Man, the story of George Mueller's incredible adventure with God. This is another in the series Stories of Great Christians, brought to you by the Moody Bible Institute of Chicago.
When we first started to talk about George Mueller, I said that sometimes I didn't understand him. The Baghdad episode is a good example. I just didn't understand how that man's mind worked. In 1833, when George and I had been co-pastors at the Gideon Chapel in Bristol about 6 months, we were both asked to go to the capital of Turkey as missionaries. But George said no, a little vaguely and a little self-righteously too, I thought. He said he had just read the life of Frank, some German chap who built a huge orphan asylum in Halle, Germany. And Frank's life had convinced him that God wanted him to minister to the underprivileged of Bristol. So we both stayed right there. And soon after, George declared he planned to start the Scriptural Knowledge Institution to sponsor day schools for youngsters who couldn't pay tuition to other schools. Now that's what I mean about George. He always chose a bad time to launch something new. His wife was expecting another baby within 2 weeks, and George didn't have more than 1 shilling to his name. But he prayed about it, and people began to give. Half-heartedly, I worked along too. In October, we were able to open 2 schools, and we began to distribute tracts and Bibles as well. I know that George was thinking that this was how God wanted him to minister to the Bristol slums. Until one day, something happened at one of the schools.
Don't do you no good to cane me, mister. I'm not taking books home tonight anyhow.
Cullen, I assigned a lesson. Is this all the gratitude you boys show, Mr. Mueller?
It won't do me no good to take books home tonight.
Is it the assignment, Cullen? You want help?
No, sir. Tain't that, sir.
Then I don't understand your attitude. Sneaking out without your books, refusing to do your assignment.
Please, sir, I wasn't sneaking. The reason it wouldn't do me no good to take books home tonight is because I...
Well, why?
Because I ain't going home. No coming back to Mr. Mueller's school, neither.
What do you mean?
Last night, they took my ma away.
Away?
To Newgate Prison, sir. So I can't go home.
Oh, what about you?
The almshouse, sir.
Colin, I'm sorry.
Ain't no use taking books home. I knows the almshouse, sir. Once you're behind that fence, well, you are, that's all. Won't be no school for me no more.
Maybe later, when your mother...
No, sir. I don't think so, sir. Please, sir. Will you say goodbye to Mr. Mueller for me? And tell him thanks a lot for everything?
This Colin, he was one of the bright boys, Conger.
You remember him. Just last week you reviewed his spelling.
Yeah, very quick mind. Conger, it is a tragedy that he drops out of school. A boy like that must be educated.
Well, you know the almshouse rules.
Maybe there's a change.
Oh, no. You find me the almshouse that lets its inmates out for schooling. Food and clothes, that's all they give, and precious little of that.
Conger, I shudder. That bright little mind, closeted up with lunatics and old women and criminals.
He's not the only one. I see a lot of youngsters from broken homes spirited off to almshouses.
Ach, what good is it if we have the schools but no students?
Well, it's really only a few that leave.
But that few... Conger, I must do something.
What?
Yeah, what?
The almshouse is run by the poor laws. You can't go to work to change legislation that's 100 years old.
Wait. Those youngsters don't go to school because the almshouses keep them away, behind that mean fence, yeah?
Yes, but...
Then the thing to do is keep the children out of the almshouses, on the other side of the fence.
But these children don't have parents. The almshouse feeds them.
Keep them out of the almshouse, away from lunatics and criminals. Put them in orphan asylums.
Orphan asylums? Why, there aren't more than 3 orphan asylums in England, and not 1 in Bristol.
There should be.
You talk like a radical. Orphanages are an experiment. A pretty revolutionary one at that. Oh, I don't think we have any real call to criticize the almshouses. They're established by law. They've been proved.
Then I start my own orphanage.
Mr. Mueller.
The only way.
Be reasonable. Suppose you decide that an orphan asylum is a sensible solution. Personally, I doubt it. Or it would have been done before.
I'm not so sure.
Even if you did decide it was sensible, why, you don't have the time to start an orphanage.
You're right about that.
Especially, if you'll pardon me for saying this, Mr. Mueller, you don't have the means.
9.
So there's really nothing you can do about the situation.
9. But Conger, why then did God put that thought in my mind?
But after this, Mary's brother, the missionary Groves, came home from the West Indies. Right away, Groves talked about going to Germany to recruit new missionary volunteers. He asked George to go along as a kind of interpreter, and George started packing his grips almost that same day. That was one thing about George. If anybody said trip, he was ready to go, even if it meant leaving other people with the work. They sailed from Dover the first part of the month, docked at Calais, then went directly to Paris. From there to Stottsburg by fast coach, and on to Stuttgart, and then rattled into the university town of Halle on March 27th.
Haul in! Haul in! Journey's end! Haul in!
Was a spring-broken driver? Such a rough ride.
There he is. That's George, all right.
Hasn't changed a bit. George, over here!
George Mueller, my boy!
Dr. Torlak, so
Welcome
good
home
to see
to
you.
Halle, George. Now, they hang up the cap, so, and rest the grip on the hall table. See, things have not changed so much in 7 years, my boy. Furniture all in the same place.
This is great, Dr. Torlak. To talk in my own tongue again, it feels so good. To hear you say my boy. I tell you, I feel like an old man.
Oh, nonsense. You're not yet 30. But the father of 2. How does it feel?
Well, it feels old.
Yes, so we are all getting older. Maybe you will not recognize your friends, George. Schmidling has grown a beard.
Nice.
Yeah.
I must see him.
And so you shall, tonight.
He's in town?
Schmidling is still at the university.
When we go over tomorrow, then
9, we see him tonight. We go to his rooms. He asked especially.
Where's he living?
Now it will seem like old times, George. He is living at Frank's Orphan Asylum on the very floor where you... George, what is wrong?
Nothing, Torlak.
You are tired. I kept you standing so long. Don't cuff me. Come, we have coffee, and then we go over to the orphanage.
Over to the orphanage?
George, is there something you and Schmidling have quarreled, maybe?
9, not Schmidling. It's,
Well?
just a thought through my head, that's all.
You look pale. Maybe you do not want to see Schmidling, eh?
Torlak, I must see him. I think it's God's will I see Schmidling. In his rooms. At the orphanage. That Frank built.
Yeah. Well, come now, George. We have coffee. George, I am so glad you are here.
So am I. And I'm just beginning to find out why I am here.
Why, George? Why did you have to go to Germany?
Please, Mary. It didn't make any difference.
It did.
But I was home 5 weeks before the boy caught the fever.
But while you were gone, it was working on. If you'd been here...
Mary, you tell me that I killed my own son?
Maybe I did. You were away. I had them both by myself. Maybe I did something wrong.
Don't blame anybody, Mary.
And Henry Craig in and out every day with his fever. coughing and spreading germs.
And don't blame Henry.
I don't. He brought me groceries, took care of the furnace, did your jobs. That's why I was here.
Mary, the baby's dying. It's upset us both terribly. We don't know what we're talking about.
I know. I'm telling you this, George Mueller. All your new talk about starting an orphanage, fancying you hear God leading you.
Mary, don't.
Well, I don't want to hear it anymore.
You're bitter, Mary. Pray about this thing that's happened.
Oh, don't talk to me like that. Listen to me, George. You'll forget that orphanage. You spend too much time worrying about the underprivileged children, working for them.
It's my ministry, Mary. My call.
So it's your calling to help every little ragamuffin on the streets while your own baby catches a fever and dies. Is it, George? Answer me that.
Oh, it was sweet of you to call on me, Pastor Mueller. I know I haven't been as regular at the chapel as I ought, but...
Well, you've had sickness, Mrs. Denton.
Yes.
Pastor Craig and I understand.
You are so understanding for such a good man. Here, sit right down in my easy chair, and I'll get some tea.
Oh,
but I always stop for tea. You will join me, won't you? Good. Now, tell me, how's Mrs. Mueller?
Quite well this fall, thank you.
Oh, I know. The baby dying last summer. It was hard for her.
Yeah, well, now, Mrs. Denton, I wonder if you'd like me to share some scripture with you.
Over tea. So much cozier, don't you think? It's all ready in the kitchen. You just sit there and look at my bookshelves. In my day, I did quite a bit of reading. Of course, you won't approve of the novels. I'll be right back.
Nice collection. Virgil, Cicero, Thackeray, and that new fella Dickens. Well, she goes in for the popular thought of the moment. Why, what's that?
I'll just wheel this little teacart right in front of you. Oh, you've found something to read. What's that one?
It's the life story of Frank. It was behind this leather-bound set.
Who?
The German, Frank. He built an orphan asylum in Halle, where I was...
Sugar?
Yes.
Dear me, that can't be my book. I never saw it before. Green?
9. Well, the book was here today.
Suppose it's been around for years. Have you read it, Mr. Mueller?
Yeah.
Now, drink your tea and tell me about it, about my own book.
Well, this man Frank, he built an orphanage in Germany to house 1,000 children. Even thousands, in the days when England still treated dependent children like slaves, 100 years ago.
Tell me, how interesting.
He was a forward-looking revolutionary and a man of God.
Do tell me more. He must have been a very wealthy man.
Nine. He had less money than...
I don't understand.
He had no money until he asked God for it. Then it was given him.
Just like that?
Yeah, just like that.
Well, if that's the case, anybody could go out and build orphanages or do anything else they wanted to.
What was that?
Well, I mean, if all Frank did was ask God for money to build his orphanages, and then anybody could go and build... Mr. Mueller, where are you going? Your tea, Mr. Mueller. Now, what ails that man?
And so we conclude Chapter 14 of To Ask No Man, the story of George Mueller's incredible adventure with God. This is another in the series Stories of Great Christians, which come to you transcribed from the Moody Bible Institute of Chicago.